What if your fatigue, brain fog, bloating, skin issues, even mood swings all trace back to one place? Most people think probiotics are the answer, but what if many of those probiotics never survive long enough to help? We're going to be talking about the hidden science of the microbiome, why gut health affects nearly every single system in your body, and how Life Enthusiast is changing the conversation around probiotics and whole body wellness. Your gut is controlling far more than you think, sometimes called the second brain. And we're going to dive into it right after this. Welcome, everybody. This is the Life Enthusiast Health Shots podcast, restoring vitality to you and the planet. I'm your co-host, Scott Patton. Joining me, as usual, health engineer Martin Patella. Hey, Martin, how are you doing today?
It's good, good, Scott. Thank you for asking. It's nice to hear you sound peaceful, relaxed, and unperturbed.
Well, I happen to be in San Miguel de la Gente, Mexico, which is a World Heritage Site, 500, 600, 700 years old. I'm not sure. Cobblestone roads and a quiet, laid back lifestyle. This is a place where when you walk down the street, you go, Buenas tardes, because it's the afternoon, and they go, Buenas tardes. And if you have a big smile, they have a big smile. It's a lovely place to be.
Yeah. So this was built by the Spaniards or by before Spaniards?
It might have been before Spaniards, but the Spaniards took over and built on top of everything.
Yeah.
So lots of old buildings, lots of beautiful, and restored buildings, kept up buildings, not like old, decrepit, falling apart buildings, and a huge cathedral. They call it a parroquiera, something like that. Parroquia. Anyway, as you can see, I still have to work on some of my Spanish. But
Yeah.
Massive cathedrals. Very, very pretty.
Yeah, it's nice to be traveling. I get to enjoy vicariously to watch you move around the planet and tell me what's new out there with your eyes.
Yeah. So, and it was interesting because I went to a little hole in the wall shop. It said it was an organic shop and it had that type of stuff in it. And there was eggs, and the eggs are just sitting out because they haven't been washed, and so they don't need to be refrigerated.
Yep.
But it was not eggs, it was farm eggs. And I thought, what an interesting way to put it. And you and I had been talking a little bit before we went on the air about this industrial age experiment that we have been in for the last 200 years. And let's dive into that a little bit before we get into the whole biome.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. You pop the microbiome into the consciousness, and it goes something like before industrial revolution up to 200 years ago, we have been evolving and living in a terrain that was very different. It was not nearly as hygienic. Yes, we did get a lot of illness when we started building medieval cities where sewage ran down the middle of the streets and pigs and chickens and everything else mingled. But then we figured out sanitation, right? One of the biggest shifts in health and survival was getting rid of manure.
Yeah.
Right. So we stopped transferring species to species, whatever else.
I read, Martin, that in Chicago, it was about Chicago and what you were talking about. Hi, George. Glad to have you joining us as usual. That they had people on the roads or on the sidewalks who had a shovel, and they would shovel the manure and make a path through it for the ladies in their big dresses to be able to cross the street.
Yes, sir.
It's hard to imagine that level of filth.
Well, the Chicago days, that's different. That's horse, right?
Yeah,
Everything was horse-drawn, horse buggies, whatever. And of course, horse, they go through a lot of grass and hay and they drop it. That's their exhaust. So
that's
the
their,
horse exhaust is kind of solid and smelly. But anyway, what I'm trying to say here is that we have not had too many generations adapting to this modified terrain where we have started breeding foods in such way that they are less fiber. We are breeding away the fiber from it, so the oligosaccharide content goes down. We're breeding them for sweetness, so they're sweeter, less bitter. It's more seductive, but it's less nutritious and it's less friendly to the microbiome, to the terrain that we have evolved with. Like, we
right,
are really just traveling bags of microbes, truly.
right. And what we're trying to do is sterilize the microbes.
And modify the inputs, right? So when they don't get what they used to get, they start growing differently. It's a lot like gardening, if you will, right? In a garden, well, visualize this. Visualize some backlot in a construction site between three houses. And is it covered in roses and broccoli? No. It's going to be thistle and lamb's quarters and every sort of a weed. Only the most resilient and most, what do I call it, invasive are the ones that are going to reproduce there. If you want a garden, you're going to have to get in there and till it and seed it and weed it and water it, because to cultivate something highly desirable, you actually have to tend it, right?
Yeah, it takes some effort. And we
Yeah.
put pretty much no effort into our gut and our digestive system.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So,
start with this. If you're born by a cesarean, instead of traveling through the birth canal and sucking through your nose and mouth all the terrain that's in your mother's birth canal, you get sterile. You get nothing. And then you're supposed to get planted onto the breast of your mother and get the colostrum and whatever. But if you're delivered by C-section, there may be a complication. And instead of getting the mother, you're going to get a bottle. And
right.
then you're going to have some complications because of that. So they're going to have some infection and they'll give you an antibiotic. So they'll further strip it down.
Yeah, we're going to a high tech, not very natural way of starting off our lives.
Right. And so there are more and more people like that. And so if you're born to a mother who has had this level of birth and childhood as a child, then she's compromised to begin with. So it's like every next generation has more and more people in it that are modified and under, I don't know what, underprepared for reality, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because the reality is we're surrounded by stuff, and our skin keeps the bad stuff out. Hopefully, it'll absorb some of the good stuff.
Yeah.
But we've got this whole thing about germophobia. One of my friend's daughters-in-laws had a baby, and they were all talking about she's constantly sterilizing everything around this little baby, right? Oh man, it's going to have a tough time growing up.
Yeah. 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 And the incidence of ADD, ADHD, and behavioral and whatever adaptations is much higher in children who have been delivered by C-section and who have lived a under-germed life.
Well, it's like you said, 500 years ago, you were in a hut and they didn't bother putting a flooring down, so it was dirt. You had the chickens and the pigs and everything else running around with you in the hut because they were like your pets, even though you would eat them eventually. And
the toddler was crawling on that floor.
That's right.
Sampling everything in his mouth because that's what toddlers do, right?
Yeah. You stick it all in there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do a definition first. I mentioned the microbiome before. What is the microbiome?
Well, micro, the little, and biome, living. So it's all the living micro creatures on your skin, in your eyes, in your nose, in your mouth. By the way, from between the mouth and your anus, that's actually the outside tube going through you.
Right. The outside in you.
Yeah, outside within. And so
So,
there are microbes living all there. And the interface between the hostile outside and the sterile, or at least protected inside, is the interface between the thinnest wall in your small and large intestines. And
so we could look at it as a forest. Like if you had this forest surrounding the planet,
yeah,
that's protecting the planet from every like cosmic rays or whatever, lightning, whatever you want to say. And inside the planet, you've got that forest covering it, and
yeah,
it's keeping everything together so
yeah,
that the planet is healthy.
yeah. And it's the interface, and it's supposed to keep out the hostile and allow only the fully digested, safe things to pass through into the inner world, right? Through the moat, past the drawbridge. And
Right.
if you have a leaky gut, it's probably because your microbiome has been damaged and they are no longer protecting you well enough.
Right. So it's been connected to our immune system, our digestion, our brain health. So even though it's down there, it affects up here.
Yeah,
Inflammation, how much energy we have, and our skin health. So
all of it.
a lot
Yeah,
of times when you see people who have a lot of acne or some problems with their skin, it's because there's something going on with so they've eaten something, drank something, put something on their skin that has
yeah,
affected the microbiome negatively.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Gut health is reflected. In fact, you can read it on the face. This area here, that's the small intestine. These two, that's your large intestine. This here, that's your heart. Under your eyes is kidneys. So, the health of your inner world will be reflected on your face. There's a map. You can look it up online. Look up the traditional Chinese medicine and face. It's out there.
We're looking then at beneficial bacteria and mean, nasty bacteria. Like
Well, it's
like
always a tug
they-
of war, Scott. Even the so-called bad ones are required. You, let me give you a metaphor. We'll have a nightclub, and at the nightclub we will have a doorman, and we will also have a bouncer. And the doorman is supposed to keep the worst of it out, but let a lot of people in. And the bouncer is supposed to catch the problem guests that are going to develop a problem and toss them out. Right? But the main job is to let a lot of guests in so that they can have good time.
Exactly.
So we need to have the bad guys, but not too many. That's the main point of it.
Right. And so today's modern lifestyle damages the microbiome through processed foods, too much antibiotics, stress, toxins in our environment, in our food, our water, poor sleep.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the things that we could say is when we're feeding ourselves, we're not just feeding us, me, we're feeding trillions of microorganisms at the same time.
This is a super important point because it's the microbes who are actually digesting the food. Remember, it's like a lot of vitamins like B12 is made in your gut by the microbes, or iron is converted from the raw form into the absorbable form by the bugs in your gut. So they are, in fact, the intermediaries that are facilitating the, the nutritional existence of us. Without the microbes, we couldn't actually survive.
Yeah. So
You made some really cool, what are they called? Slideshows.
yes, we should bring. I'll bring them up.
Yeah.
What we're going to be talking about is a new line that we have called Microbiome Labs, and we're going to talk about a couple of the products that they've got, because this is an absolutely amazing way to feed your microbiome. But before we get to that, what I wanted to ask is, what is the difference between a traditional probiotic and the microbiome probiotics we're going to be talking about?
Well, the main differentiator will be the sporogenic versus the living, right? Traditionally, things like yogurt has the living microbes in it, and you need to eat it when it's in its right state. And if you try to preserve it, it doesn't work. Like, it has to be refrigerated, and it doesn't last very long, and you have to encapsulate it, and it has a very quickly diminishing rate of return on what you get. And the other ones, the sporogenic types, that's essentially they're hibernating, or they're in the state of reproduction, where the spore is what is like a seed, and you bring that seed into the garden, your garden being warm and moist inside of you, and when you swallow it, they pop to life and they start reproducing and doing what they should be doing.
Cool. All right. So here we go. We're engineering your intestinal ecosystem.
Right on. The microscopic foundation to systemic resilience. Truly, right? Well, you have to manage the whole thing. And the microbes are, in fact, super important. Anyway, should push it forward. Here we go.
Well, here we're looking at the paradigm shift.
Right. Yeah, this is a really nice thought pattern here of making a difference between the philosophy of the Western medicine, as Rockefeller and Carnegie promote, which is focus on a symptom, isolate the symptom, and try and treat the symptom. When in fact, the symptom really is just like the tip of the iceberg, and the 90% of the iceberg is somewhere below the waterline, not visible, and you need to think of what gave rise to this symptom. What's keeping it afloat?
As you were speaking, Martin, what came to my mind was a tree, and the tree is doing really, really poorly. So they give it some, they poke it with something, and they look at all these different things that they try to do to fix it. Maybe cut off a limb, or take some leaves off, or whatever, when actually it just needs to be watered, right?
Well,
or it needs fertilizer.
Yeah. Interestingly, Scott, this metaphor, as much as you see above ground, you don't see the below ground, but the root system has to support the tree.
Yeah.
So that's one. And two, when a leaf falls off of a tree, you don't try to glue the leaf back on the branch. You start asking, why did it fall off? Is it a nutrient deficiency, water deficiency, something toxic in the soil, whatever, right?
Or is it autumn and it's getting ready for winter?
Yeah, that too.
So let's talk about the fatal flaw of traditional probiotics.
Yeah, most probiotics don't make it through the stomach, because the stomach is highly acidic, and it's designed to kill off all invading microbes. So a lot of what you swallow doesn't survive. Yeah. So you need to put it into a packet, into a package that is going to survive the trip through the stomach.
And spores are something that are designed to survive in hostile environments.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah.
So let's take a look at this spore-based technology.
Right. So they're talking about the spore, right? The endospore being the shell, and within it is the genetic material. I mean, the spore is essentially a seed, right? Same thing. Like if you try to swallow rice uncooked whole, you're going to get nothing out of it. You'll be pooping the whole rice grains probably. Maybe that's not the best metaphor.
Well, I
But
was thinking of there's a lot of birds, right? And
yeah,
they'll eat these seeds, and because of the bird's digestive system and everything else, the
yeah,
seed needs it in order to sprout out, and then it gets pooped out onto the ground, and then
yeah,
the plant starts to grow. And
yeah,
this is the same thing. You've got that armor around it that's protecting it from your stomach acids, which are
yeah,
really pretty powerful. And once they get past that or they get to the right place,
yeah.
then they're planted in the part of the body that they should be planted in.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the whole point of it, is that once it's in the small intestine, it wakes up and starts growing.
So we're going to take a look at a couple of the products now. Megaspore Biotic.
Yeah. Yeah, the Megaspore Biotic is indeed the core of it, right? When you have a compromised digestive system, you need to reseed it. The garden needs replanting. And the Megaspore is the sporogenic concept. Just bring it in, put it on.
Here it is.
Yeah, the labels are really cool looking. I like that. Anyway, there you have it. There's
And,
the initial seeding.
yeah, and as usual, we've got the description, we've got the details about it. Look at all the different bacteria.
Yeah, these are specific strains that have been tested and researched, or researched and tested to be effective. Like, for example, the second line, Bacillus subtilis, that's a hostile strain that kills off the unfriendlies. It doesn't do anything other than parasite itself on the unfriendly microbes within you.
It's the bouncer you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And then we've got the ingredients you can look into, and then how to use it. And we have got some scientific references.
Further info. Yeah.
All right. And let's take a look at MegaPre.
Yeah. So that's a prebiotic, right? So prebiotic is food for the probiotic. As I was talking about the food that we now have, the industrial food that has been selectively bred to have less fiber and less bitterness. So you now have more sweetness, more starch, therefore more food for certain types of microbes. But what you really need is the hard fiber. And the prebiotic is what feeds the microbes that are living within you, whose job it is to actually process the food that you send in. So this is what that is. This is a prebiotic mix.
Right. And then we've got MegaMucosa.
Right. So now the mucosa is the barrier between the hostile world within and the fragile world on the other side of the barrier. And the
leaky gut is a real problem for many people, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you need to have a really good mucosal barrier. And if you don't have that, leaky gut is indeed one of the conditions that will rise in that.
Yeah. So if you're chronically in pain or you've chronic problems with your stomach, this is probably one of the reasons why you don't have a strong intestinal barrier.
Yeah, that would be that, because you get underdigested food through the wall, and they could be hostile bits, parasitic or microbial, but more often than not, these are simply underdigested bits of food that your immune system starts identifying as not me. And once it sees it as not me, it attacks. But attacking stuff always is, gunfire. All kinds of innocent bystanders get hit by that.
Right. Okay. And so we'll come back to this one. Zenbiome sleep.
Okay, well, go back to the slides, Scott. So we're going to restore the flora. Oh, this is a really interesting concept here. You just hit the vagus nerve, the bidirectional communication. You see what happens is this vagus nerve or vagus nerve is the regulator of all things. and it's listening to all the organs and acting on what it's hearing back. So it's both a commander and a responder, both ways. And the gut brain connection is traveling through this vagus nerve. That's the superhighway, the bidirectional communication. In fact, just the other day, I saw an article that said, the gut brain or the gut intelligence is super important, highly underappreciated, and it's the instant reaction brain, right? It's the one that keeps our emotional health or our intuitive side running. Yeah.
Cool. And
that's the Zenbiome you mentioned, which, so that's the left side of the slide talks about the gut-brain reset, is where you actually get the right formulations in your gut, and the gut starts working. It will reflect itself back to the brain, and your brain will work better.
Yeah, if you're getting good nutrition into the brain, it helps, and usually we don't because our gut is off.
Yeah.
And then the Zenbiome sleep.
So that's a combination of bifidobacteria, which is the calming bugs, and they also combined it with L-theanine and lemon balm. So L-theanine is an amino acid that sets you in a much calmer mode. And so that's a combination of microbes and herbs setting you off for a better experience. They have a daytime version and nighttime version. So you can take one that's working in the day and one that you take in the evening. So you can have a restful sleep that's going to restore you.
And the other one is if you're highly anxious during the day?
Yeah, that's it. To reduce nervousness.
So now we've got our macro ecosystem.
Yeah, everything connects to everything else. How do they call it? The hip bone's connected to the knee bone and so on.
Yeah.
Well, here you see the whole thing. The gut is communicating with the body through the cardiovascular. And of course, that carries everything to the bones and other organs. So everything's connected. I don't know, you have osteoporosis. It's probably a reflection of how well your digestion is working. You have high blood pressure. It's probably a reflection of how well your gut is working.
Everything starts there, doesn't it? Yeah. All bases are covered. Yes, George.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. It's the whole team, right? Like you cannot ignore any component of it. The Super Bowl winning team, the guy that's really important is the one that was cutting the grass on the training field so the guys were able to train. And the guy who chose which running shoes they were going to wear. And the guy who massaged the tired bodies. They all carried the ball past the goal line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about calcium.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, so calcification is one of those interesting things. Hardening of arteries is caused by calcium. So if you route the calcium into the bones, that's where you want it. If you route it into your arteries, that's where you not want it. And the switcher is, in fact, regulated by a vitamin D3, which you manufacture in your body by exposing yourself to a lot of sunlight. But if you're living indoors, you may as well consume vitamin D3 supplement. But the regulator of the D3 of the calcification pathway is the K2. So this vitamin K2 is like a traffic director and decides whether the calcium gets deposited with the help of the D3 in the bone or in the artery. So if you take lots of D3 on its own, you'll end up with possibly calcium in the wrong place.
Right. So here's the MegaQuin K2 and D3 product that they have.
Right on.
Optimum calcium utilization, strong bone density, cardiovascular and arterial health, the three things you were just talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
I think one of the ingredients probably will be, well, could you look it up? Could you go back to it? Open the ingredients. What is that quin in the product name?
Here it is.
Okay, guys, you hit me with the ingredients.
Vitamin
D3, that's the cholecalciferol, D3. And then there's this MegaQuin Gold. What the heck is that? Some kind of a proprietary, I don't know what.
Yeah, product. Well, I know that you're meeting with the makers soon, and you can ask them, and
I sure will. Yeah, yeah. Oftentimes they create these patented compounds that they feel so protective about, and say it's better than everyone else.
Right. So this is the biological blueprint. You've got an interlocking protocol that covers everything you need to cover.
Right. If you look at it from outside in, systemic optimization, everything's running well, but that's predicated by your gut running well, the gut-brain connection functioning, which is actually predicated by your gut health, which is predicated by which of the species within are thriving or not. And so if you overgrow the wrong kind of stuff in your garden, that's going to break your gut, which will in turn break your brain, which will in turn break all of your functioning in this world.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Martin, there's a couple questions that have come in from the audience.
Except you're not watching the clock, Scott.
Yeah, I know, but we'll finish this off. Do I need probiotics every day?
Only if you are killing them every day. How's your lifestyle? Are you maintaining a decent terrain? If not, yes.
So what foods would you say damage the microbiome the worst?
The worst would be glyphosate, which is an antibiotic-like stuff, and chlorine in drinking water, and of course the hostile antibiotic themselves, and then strong chemicals, drugs, alcohol, that sort of stuff, and all the chemical, whatever you have.
And one person wrote, fermented foods alone, are they enough?
They're awesome, they're beneficial, and they have lactobacillus in it, and they, yeah, it's useful, but no, not enough.
Not enough.
It's not in this world. Yeah, 120 years ago, your grandmother, yeah, that's all they needed. But they did not live in the age of nuclear attack by glyphosate all the time.
And antibiotics that were overused.
Yeah. Yeah. The antibiotic in your chicken and hamburger and who knows what else, right?
Yeah, you could be getting it and not even knowing you're getting it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, Martin. We've come to the end of our time today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Really appreciate you. We're live every Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments. Anything you want us to talk about, any issues you feel are important that we could share with our audience and deal with. We appreciate your feedback. You've been watching or listening the Life Enthusiast Health Shots podcast, restoring vitality to you and the planet. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
My body's a temple, but the walls are cracked. Stuck in the rubble of the years I've stacked. Stagnation in my veins like a river turned to dust. Toxic whispers in the wind, but I gotta rebuild. I must restore.